actually have to go back a little bit on this. As a doctoral student, well, even before that, I was a teacher in a rural school in Georgia, and mostly I was in special education. I mostly worked with kids who found school pretty challenging. And I mostly worked on reading and math skills. And I thought, I'd like to know more because I didn't feel as confident or competent as I felt I should have been, particularly in terms of teaching reading. And so I went to pursue a doctorate, actually with the idea that I might go back in the classroom. And I minored in reading. And I have to say, I did a mediocre dissertation in reading. I looked at miscue analysis, which was work that Kenneth Goodman and Yetta Goodman had been doing, probably 80 studies involving that. And so I had a small rift on that. And I realized my minor person in reading said, you could have done better, which, most people don't say that to you. And it actually was an important thing for her to say that to me, because I realized I wasn't as interested in reading as I thought I was initially. And what had happened is I started to have to write for classes, doing papers for publication. I became more and more interested in how that process worked out. And at the same time, I was reading a lot of the reviews in the Paris Review that people like Hemingway and Irving and others were talking about how they went about the writing process. And I was just intrigued every which way with this. And so when I finished my doctoral program, I took a non-tenured job at Auburn University where I was teaching 20 hours a week and running a grant. So it doesn't sound like I had a lot of time to do other stuff, but I did 3 reviews on writing, 1 a year. And really, they were for me. I mean, they were published, but I did them so that I could have a historical view of writing research. And I did 1 on composition, 1 on handwriting, and 1 on spelling. Because remember, my primary interest was kids who had special needs. And a lot of the kids that I'd been working with, transcription skills were particularly problematic. And what happened during that time is I met my future wife, Karen Harris, who I think is also going to be talking to you guys, I think. I probably shouldn't say that if not being sure, but she was interested in Don Meichenbaum's work in cognitive behavior modification, where you use self-speech to direct your behavior. And so we combined our interests, hers in cognition and mine in writing, and she developed this SRSD approach, which was aimed at helping kids become more strategic, but also to help them learn about, acquire the knowledge needed to use the strategic processes within specific genres they were working in, and also taught self-regulation procedures such as goal setting, self-monitoring, self-talk, and self-reinforcement, along with ways of helping kids develop a positive sense of their competence as writers. So a lot of stuff went into that package. And I'll bring this long response to an end shortly. But one of the things that happened about 15 to 20 years later, we realized that the kids that we were most interested in, those with special needs, they're basically in regular education classrooms almost all the time now. And they weren't getting much in terms of writing in their special classrooms. And so we became very concerned about what was going on and very interested in what was going on generally. And so that was kind of a move outward from this kind of inward move of special education to a broader move outwards. And we initially started doing that by thinking about what is effective writing instruction in general and how that might parlay with kids with special needs and what's actually happening in classrooms. And so about 20 meta-analysis later, and probably about 15 to 20 national surveys, either in the US or in other countries, I don't kind of identify as much with, not that I'm not interested in special education anymore, I am, but my focal point has become a lot broader than that. So it started very narrow and then increasingly became much more broad. And the meta-analysis have helped spur that as well, because it's meant that I had to take a look broadly at why writing's important, how we teach writing, what things writing affects in a more broad sense.